But above the gray land and the spasms of the bleak dust which drift endlessly over it, you perceive, after a moment, the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg are blue and gigantic. Their retinas are 1 yard high. They look out of no face, but instead from a pair of enormous yellow spectacles which pass over a non-existent nose. But his eyes, dimmed a little by many paintless days under sun and rain, brought on over the solemn-dumping ground.
Miss Baker, Mr. Gatsby would like to speak with you.
With me?
Yes, ma'am.
I just heard the most amazing thing. How long were we in there?
Why, about an hour.
It was simply amazing, but I swore I wouldn't tell it, and here I am tantalizing you. In 1917.
The largest of the lawns belonged to Daisy Faye's house. She was just 18, 2 years older than me, and by far the most popular of all the young girls in Louisville. She dressed in white and had a little white roadster, and all day long the telephone rang in her house, and excited young officers from Camp Taylor demanded the privilege of monopolizing her that night. Anyways, for an hour. When I came opposite her house that morning, her white roadster was beside the curb, and she was sitting in it with a lieutenant I had never seen before. They were so engrossed in each other that she didn't see me until I was 5 feet away. The officer looked at Daisy while she was speaking, in a way that every young girl wants to be looked at sometime, and because it seemed romantic to me, I've remembered the incident ever since. His name was Jay Gatsby, and I didn't lay eyes on him again for over 4 years. Even after I'd met him in Long Island, I didn't realize it was the same man.
It amazed me. I had never been in such a beautiful house before, but what gave it an air of breathless intensity was that Daisy lived there. It was as casual a thing to her as my tent out at camp was to me. It excited me, too, that many men had already loved Daisy. It increased her value in my eyes. I knew that Daisy was extraordinary, but I didn't realize just how extraordinary a nice girl could be. She vanished into her rich house, into her rich, full life, leaving me nothing. I felt married to her, that was all. She had caught a cold and made her voice huskier and more charming than ever, and I was overwhelmingly aware of the youth and mystery that wealth imprisons and preserves, of the freshness of many clothes and of Daisy, gleaming like silver, safe and proud above the hot struggles of the poor.
That was 1917. Wild rumors were circulating about her, how her mother had found her packing her bag one winter night to go to New York and say goodbye to a soldier who was going overseas. She was effectually prevented, but she wasn't on speaking terms with her family for several weeks. After that, she didn't play around with the soldiers anymore. By the next February, she was presumably engaged to a man from New Orleans. In June, she married Tom Buchanan of Chicago with more pomp and circumstance than Louisville ever knew before. The day before the wedding, he gave her a string of pearls valued at $350,000.
Well, about 6 weeks ago, she heard the name Gatsby for the first time in years. It was when I asked you, do you remember, if you knew Gatsby in West A? After you had gone home, she came into my room and woke me up and said, "What Gatsby?" And when I described him, I was half asleep. She said in the strangest voice that it must be the man she used to know. It wasn't until then that I connected this Gatsby with the officer in her white car.
Of course she might have loved him, just for a minute, when they were first married, and loved me even more then. Do you see?
He had talked a lot about the past, and I gathered that he wanted to recover something, some idea of himself, perhaps, that had gone into loving Daisy. His life had been confused and disordered since then, but if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it all slowly, he could find out what that one thing was. You shouldn't ask too much of her. You can't repeat the past.
Can't repeat the past? Of course you can.
I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in that vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with, but I